Wednesday, March 23rd, we are back with another release show via Established a Run. Drew Dinkmeyer joining me, 2 for 2 last week to get the show going. Everybody's very happy with the process and the progress so far. A little bit of a sweat with Jokic last Friday. Would you say so?
Yeah. The only sweat was whether he was going to take enough shots. I mean, that was the big thing. He was like 8 for 9, 11 for 14 at one point. It was just like, all right, dude, just take enough shots. Got there in the final minute, then got a little overtime equity too to pile on to the number. But a nice sweat indeed. Happy to close out 2-0. Let's see if we can keep it going.
Before we get to the release, I have one question to ask you just from like a process standpoint. So not only is this show unique because of the ability for everybody following to tap into your knowledge and the projections that you and the team create at ETR, but when you gave the explanation to the prop both last week for Washington and Jokic, how much do you go back and sort of validate the handicap that you had and the angle that you were looking at relative to the projections as well? Because not only was the projection spot on, but the way the game played out, exactly what you said, almost word for word here on the show.
Yeah, we do like to try, especially with stuff like the Jokic one was unique because that was a little bit more art than science in terms of our projection. We had a projection advantage, but it was pretty small. It's actually not a projection advantage we'd usually bet from a size perspective, but I felt really good about kind of the more artsy stuff that I kind of dug around the situation without Jared Allen. And so I definitely have kept an eye kind of on, paint points really and what Cleveland's giving up in the paint over the last 5-7 games without Jared Allen. And that does, as we get more data that works into the model, that kind of flows through. But in the meantime, those are things that you're kind of looking for. It's one of these things when you look at the markets all day long and projections all day long, you just start to get a feel for where you're light, where you're heavy, and then you investigate why. Like, why am I heavy this situation? Why am I light this situation? And sometimes you come up with answers that end up changing the projections and moving things around. And sometimes you don't come up with answers. And those are situations that usually suggest that your edge is pretty strong on the bet. And then you just, keep checking if it's the case. There's definitely been times during the course of the year where we've gone back to the same type of bet 3 or 4 nights in a row. I mean, or the first week of the season, we were betting Kemba Walker unders for like 6 straight days. And he kept shooting like 70% from 3 to beat us the first few. And it was very, very frustrating. Our subscribers were like, no more Kemba, please. And I was like, the math is good here. Like, I know it's good. And then, 3 months later, his points under was 7 points lower. It is what it is.
It's always how the market goes, and they tend to adjust when you know that you have that edge and you keep beating it over and over. And I think everybody in the chat is ready for you to potentially provide a third winner here for the third show. So for everybody new, I think it's time to get to the release, but we'll explain the procedure first, because when Established a Run for your NBA, for Adam and Evan with the NFL stuff, for anything that the team send out, there's a very short window that you're going to be able to get the bet. So we have to follow a release procedure here on the show. So everybody watching in the chat is going to be able to get the same price. And so when we're looking at the steps that we have to follow, they're put in place so everybody can go step by step and get to the bet at the same time, click submit at the same time, and then you're going to be able to beat the price that we are giving out here on the release, and you're not going to be caught betting late and getting a bad number. So very simply, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to start off by telling you what game we are betting on. That is your cue to go to your sportsbook, find the game, open the menu, and then continue to follow along. The second step, I'll tell you what prop market we are betting. So now that you have the game open, you can go to the prop market. That'll get you a step closer. I'll then tell you what team we are betting on. So if your sportsbook has it divided by team, you can get that ready, or you can visually look and see which players play for that team, so you're one step closer to clicking on it. Then I'm going to say who is the player we are betting on, and then I'm going to say whether the bet is an over or an under. And I will say today that step 4 and 5 are going to be a little bit quicker than usual. We like to have 10 to 15 seconds between steps, but once we get to step 4, I'll combine it with step 5 because we think it's going to move very, very quickly. So 4 and 5 are going to come out together today. So we'll get you right to the team that you're going to be finding the player to bet on. And then 4 and 5 are going to come up very quickly. So I think with that said, Drew, are we ready to get started here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So we're starting off with the game we're betting on, and that is Houston at Dallas. So you're going to have to go through and find Houston, Dallas tonight. Open that game. We'll give everybody 10 to 15 seconds to get to your sports book and find Houston and Dallas. The prop market we are betting on is total points, rebounds, and assists. So there's a chance that you're either going to see that in the menu or you're going to find player combos, and you're looking for player points, rebounds, and assists. So give everybody about 10 seconds to find player points, rebounds, and assists. And again, you may be looking at a book where it's under player combos. Other books have the prop listed specifically. Some will have it under T for total as well. But again, the market is player points, rebounds, and assists. The team of which the player we are betting on plays for is the Dallas Mavericks. So we'll be betting on a Mavericks player total points, rebounds, and assists. We'll give 10 more seconds for everybody to get to the Dallas section of player total points, rebounds, and assists. And again, we'll get to step 4 here in 5. It'll come out as one together. So I'll give everybody a couple more seconds to get here, and then I'll tell you which player we are betting and whether it is an over or an under. The bet today is Jalen Brunson over 29.5 total points, rebounds, and assists. Jalen Brunson over 29.5 total points, rebounds, and assists. This is a bet you want to get into your bet slip. You want to bet it quickly, and there's some very interesting reasoning behind this, but if you're finding Brunson over 29.5 total points, rebounds, and assists, this is the bet for today. The release from Drew and ETR. And as we're seeing now, that number at FanDuel specifically went from minus 115 all the way up to minus 172. If you're in the chat, let us know, where did you bet it? What price were you able to get? How are you seeing it move so far? Kellen Walsh was able to get this one exactly at FanDuel at minus 115. Someone else was able to get minus 115 at DraftKings. Let us know in the chat, where were you betting? What were you getting? And we'll pull those comments up just to show everybody what was available to get. Chris Bolden got it at minus 114. Ryan Selter, MGM, minus 110. Seeing a lot more FanDuel minus 115, along with DK. People saying DK is moving slow. They'll do that, but they'll be quick to turn away your business, especially when you're betting on a guy like Drew's prop releases. So keep that in mind as you're watching, but doesn't look like anybody had any issues getting this, aside from the people who were maybe stuck at one book that didn't have this available, which is why it's important to have multiple. But again, you're always going to be able to find the prop somewhere if you have multiple books, but looks like everybody was able to get it. Drew, what's going on here with the Brunson over? What has you on this prop tonight?
Yeah, so the big piece of the equation is that Luka Doncic is ruled out tonight, which obviously the books have adjusted for. These lines are bigger than what we would normally get for Jalen Brunson. But if you noticed on the screen there was a gap between Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie of about 3 in terms of the PRI. We don't have a gap between those two players. We think they're correctly or closer to correctly evaluating Dinwiddie, and we think they're a little bit light on Brunson. So 30.5 is still going to be okay and bettable. And even like 31.5 starts to get tight, but there was actually quite a bit of room on this. In addition, Houston is one of the worst defensive teams in the league, specifically against penetrating guards. And this is where both Dinwiddie and Brunson do a ton of their work. So this should be a really favorable matchup. We would expect pretty normal minutes. They are 10-point favorites, so there's a little bit risk of blowout here. But even so, we've accounted and baked in some of that risk. We've got Jalen Brunson at about 34.5 minutes, and we're projecting around 34 combined PRA in this one. So Jalen Brunson's played up to 37, 38 minutes in games without Luka this year. Many of those games have been without Luka, but with Kristaps Porzingis. So they're kind of similar situations to without Luka, but with another primary scorer in Spencer Dinwiddie. We feel really good about the matchup. We feel really good about Dallas's motivation, trying to continue to climb in seeding. And so we expect a really big night from Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie. We just don't think there should be a gap between the two from a PRA perspective.
You mentioned that you had the projection around 34.5. The bet was at 29.5. What does that gap typically look like relative to a regular bet that you send out?
Yeah, tighter. Typically, I would say, so that's greater. That's more like a 15% percentage gap in terms of projection gap. PRA, we don't need quite as big of a percentage gap because it's an all-encompassing stat. It's catching everything that the player's doing on the floor, so the distributions are a little bit smoother. But generally, I would say, we might have somewhere around a 10 percentage point gap, like 8 percentage point gap in terms of the projection that the EV still looks good. On overs, we look for a little bit higher than we do on unders, and especially depending on the number. Like we took a Giannis under PRA last night that had very little projection gap, but it was an under and it was 52.5 was the line, which is huge. So our distribution suggests the unders are strong in those spots. But yeah, it's a little bit, I'd say it's like, this is probably 1.5x what we normally get in terms of edge. So it's a pretty good edge bet.
You mentioned you had a bet on Giannis. For everybody following the chat that might not know, where can they go to get the rest of those props that you guys give out on a daily basis?
Yeah, if you go to establishtheRun.com and go to our subscribe page, you'll see the ability to get into our NBA props package. With that, you get access to a Discord. In our Discord, we have a channel that's filled with subs who are actually sourcing tons of different bets. They bet first quarter lines this year. It's been really interesting watching the community kind of grow, and I think it's been a big value add for subscribers. And then we have a second Discord channel that you get access to that is only where we place the bets. So we put notifications in the channel NBA Props where everybody can see it, that a bet is coming. And then we announce, much like this release, in a similar fashion. We give some time, let people queue up what book has the best juice, what book has the best line. And then we announce the bet in an ETR NBA Bets channel where we have basically the transaction log of every bet we've logged during the course of the season, which at this point is over 900 NBA player prop bets.
Long-term winner and a long-term results, and it's really showing in all of those packages. So for anybody that loves the NBA, could not recommend it enough. If you've enjoyed the show, there's a subscribe button down below. We appreciate you subscribing. If this is the first time on the channel, you're continuing to come back. We're going to be doing another release show over on the ETR YouTube channel on Friday. Every Wednesday and Friday at 1 p.m. this show will be taking place, so hopefully a lot more props to come. And a lot more success to come beginning tonight with Jalen Brunson on the heels of 2 winners last week. He is Drew Dinkmeyer. I am Adam Chernoff. This was the ETR release show on Covers. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by. Enjoy the bet tonight, and we'll see you again Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern.